Thank you very much, George. It's my pleasure to be here. I know George for a long time, and I've heard a lot about GERAD and HSM Montreal. It's finally nice to be here in person, especially after the COVID, that you get to travel and meet people physically. That's also nice, you know. All right, so and this is the first time for me doing a hybrid call. So those who are on Zoom, if you feel that you're not hearing me or not seeing me, just let me know, okay? So in my talk today, I'm going to discuss about space planning in retail stores. And we have in mind applications mostly in supermarkets for the time being. Essentially, the problem we're looking at is simple. You have a supermarket and you have categories, things like coffee, milk, sugar, even other things like vegetables, maybe perishable things, things that are frozen. And the question is, where do you allocate these things in the store? You know, so retailers, they plan these things and they have some format that they copy in different places. Sometimes they customize based on geography. But to our knowledge, this problem at looking at the store as a whole has not been addressed in the literature. I mean, the literature looks at one shelf or a set of shelves, and there the main problem is to determine how much space to assign to each category on the shelf. Our work here is more on the location, where to assign things in the store. And in practice, retailers do this. So often you may be familiar with one supermarket in your neighborhood or in your area. You go there one day and you see things that have moved around for some reason. So retailers do move things around, and they do it for one objective of attracting more profit. Sometimes they overdo it. They hide, let's say, the items that you want, the water or the milk in the back of the store to make you walk too much. Sometimes they overdo it. So our work is trying to target this, to propose for the retailers a framework for the allocation of categories to the store in a way that is reasonable. It will give them a good profit, what we call good impulse profit from unplanned purchases for the customers. And at the same time, it's not too bad for the customers. In this talk today, I'm only talking about the profit side of it. So we're taking the retailer's point of view. We have other ongoing work. I'll talk about them at the end, where we take more into the point of view, the well-being of the customer. So this is something, yeah, I mean, it's not just like capitalists trying to make they're happy, but we are trying also to be nice to the customer. So this is what we're trying to do, kind of. So in my talk today, I will give some motivation, present the problem, review the literature briefly, present our model and assumption, one of the models we're working on. And then we were fortunate for this particular paper I'm presenting today. We had a real data set from Beirut, from a small supermarket in Beirut. So I'm going to present how I applied the model to that particular real case study. And then I will present some insights and some ideas for future work. So in terms of the motivation, I mean, in the last 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years. So since I got my PhD in 2005, more and more people in operation research and industrial engineering are working on retailing, both in the brick and mortar retailing and in e-commerce. Some people are calling this they're calling this movement or this trend of research rocket science retailing, because on Wall Street, finance used to be very classical. People used to pick stocks based on some gut feeling or intuition. Now they use very heavy math to pick stocks. Something similar is happening in retailing. Now we do pricing and we do assortment planning and space planning, what we're discussing today, using some pretty sophisticated tools. That's why, I mean, this field is growing, and that's why we're calling this rocket science retailing. And it's important for retailing because, like in the US, retailing is 40% of the economy. So, I mean, if in retailing, I think you could have a very important reach. You could maybe affect more people than finance even. Part of the motivation is, for example, this chart here. It shows the investment of artificial intelligence in providing solutions, things like, for example, inventory management, shelf planning, along with our talk today, pricing software for the brick and mortar retailers. And this investment was in the US around $2 billion in 2021. So people are spending lots of money for retail analytics. And what we do here, essentially, in our research, would provide the algorithms, the backbone for these applications, okay? So this is something not just of academic interest, it is receiving interest in the industry. There is, for example, a very active group at Oracle. They do this kind of retail pricing. I know at IBM. So this is something which is, and even like retailers like Walmart, like Target, I have colleagues who are working there right now doing things like this. So this is not just a theoretical area of research, it's a growing area of application. Now, what we are targeting today is impulse buying. So this is when you go to the supermarket and you have on your list healthy things like milk, water, and bread, and you end up buying things which are not too healthy. And according to many studies, this amounts to more than 50% of sales in the in retail stores, and especially in supermarkets, actually. Yes.
So what is the definition of impulse buying?
Something
you don't have on your list?
Yes. Yes. And typically, these are, I'll talk more about this, these are more hedonic products. So things that are related to pleasure. So chocolate, candy, cosmetic things, you know. And there's a pricing problem there, which we didn't tackle yet. But essentially, typically what happens is the things you have on your shopping list are so-called fast movers. And retailers tend to mark these down. I mean, I worked in the industry for a while. Typically, the retailers, they mark down the fast-moving items, and they make most of their money on the impulse buying. So beyond the volume, there's also high margin on these impulsive items. We didn't address the pricing problem yet. This is something we could be looking at in the future. Yes.
So if the product is not, I mean, if there is no impulse buying, if a product, you have assigned it a category that it's not from impulse buying, then it is almost identical where you place it, right? Because people will anyhow buy it.
That's a very good point. In our research, we tend to assume that look, if you want water, you will make enough effort to find it. So that's one thing that the referees of the paper actually were asking about. And we exactly said that. So thank you for giving us a support for our opinion. Yeah. Yes. So fast movers essentially are essentially that you can find them. And one thing for them, I mean, they're bulky, you know, like water or milk. I mean, even they're placed in a different aisle, you will tend to find them. Yeah. All right. So again, so for the fast movers are the healthy stuff, just to emphasize the ideas. So milk, cheese, water, healthy stuff, eggs, and the impulse products are things that we are ashamed to buy even. Who would say that I want to store and I bought these? I mean, last night I was shopping at Metro next to my hotel, and I was like, I went for these, and even though I know this, I preach this, I ended up buying some of these. You know, so this is this is what happens to all of us. Sometimes it's like food related, sometimes it's like cosmetics. You know? And it's a fact of life. I mean, whether it's good or not, retailers do it. And again, in our ongoing research, we try to balance their interest with the customer interest. And it seems that that's a win-win situation, because if retailers push it too much, the customers will get tired. We don't have it here, have other papers from the shopping effort. If they do it in a balanced way, both would be happy, it seems. So that's the idea here. And again, so we want to decide on the shelf space to allocate to each product. So how much space to allocate, which is a classical problem in the literature. So if you know the literature on retail space planning, it's mostly on shelf, and they assume that there's space elasticity there, which means the more you allocate, the more demand you have. And the problem is how to divide the shelf between different categories of products. So by category, we mean a big master product. So milk, coffee, tea. Okay, we're not talking about, for example, I don't know, 2 liters Coke or 2 liters Pepsi. This would be under soda. Okay.
So you are not considering brands, nor products.
No, just the category. Okay. Because the problem as it is complicated. Other researchers have tried to extend more like to the SKU level, but the what they call them, combinatorics, they get too messy. You know? But multi-stage approaches are promising. So from our research, you have how much to allocate to each category. Then on that particular thing, you can apply some of those classical methods. And we believe that that will not be very far from optimal. So some people have done that. So the first objective is how much, the first decision is how much to allocate to each product on the shelf. And second, the most important for us, and we show numerically that this in terms of optimality, this gives you much more profit, is how much where to allocate. So how, space to allocate each product and where to allocate each product. So we will see that the where is the more important question for us. And the objective for now is to maximize impulse buying as we just defined that. Now, in terms of, I'm going to talk a little bit about the literature here. So there was this study by some researchers at, I believe, TUM in Germany, and they had this framework for retail space planning research. So they go from the store layout to the category assignment to the product allocation. So what you're asking about is here. We are spanning aspect of these two. And according to this, so we are looking at the assignment of categories to divisions meaning departments. So typically retailers divide the store into departments. Then they choose which categories will go into each department. And then they will decide on the space to allocate to each category, size of the categories. So this is, and this paper was written in collaboration with some industry partners in Germany. So those guys, they seem to say that this is the practice. But what we disagree with them on is that they said that the assignment of categories to shelves happen once every multiple years. We believe that maybe you'll do a major design once every couple of years, but retailers, they change the location of some categories often. And the tool we're proposing here would help in providing some science about where to move certain categories. You know, so instead of just swapping aisles 10 and 15, or maybe you will move aisle 10 to aisle 13 and 15 will go somewhere else. So we are providing a more educated decision tool for assigning on these things, for deciding on these things. So these things are tactical decisions, basically. They are decided a couple of times a year, we believe. And this is good thing for computational efficiency. So if you have things that runs in a couple of hours, as it happened with us here, it will be useful because we don't need to run this on the fly every couple of minutes, as in some e-commerce application, for example. So in terms of the literature, briefly on this. So the classical literature on retail space planning, like I said, single shelf, and they account for space elasticity mostly, and cross space elasticity. There have been some recent reviews of that. This is the recent literature, and it's growing. We're happy to see this growing exponentially. The store-wide. So we don't look at one shelf, you look at multiple shelves. Okay, there have been many researchers working on this, and often not talking to each other. You know, so what we tried to do recently, we had this edited book where most of these authors contributed chapters to this book. So this book, which is coming soon from Springer, hopefully will connect many ideas from these fine researchers. And this is advertisement for the book. Basically, the background for this, I mean, what made us go to this line of research is also what we did before on pricing, assortment, and inventory decisions. So in retailing, there are some critical decisions, and most of the emerging literature I told you about is on the three main decisions of how to price items, which SKUs to offer in a category, and about the inventory management, how much to have on the shelf, how much to have in the back room. So this is like the fourth dimension. So I mean, once you decide about the inventory, you also have to decide where to locate the items. So for us, this was like the first dimension of, we did some work, as you can see here before, on pricing, assortment, and inventory, and this kind of complements the picture for us. All of our work has been on brick and mortar retailing. We believe, I mean, that there is still opportunity there. I mean, in the US, 80% of the value is still in brick and mortar retailing, despite the advance in e-commerce. Like everybody, we're trying to branch into e-commerce and omnichannel retailing, but we still believe that there is a big opportunity for the brick and mortar retail. So the main ingredient of what we did, which took us a long time to develop, is the traffic. So the idea is, why do you put water or milk at the back of the store? Because they will drive traffic to the rest of the store. So how do you estimate that? Okay, that took us a long time to craft, and eventually we come up with this idea that the traffic at a particular shelf in the store, it depends on the shelf location in the store. So if a shelf is close to entrance or exit, it will tend to have high traffic naturally. And second, the products located at the shelf will tend to give it more traffic. And also not at the shelf only, at other neighboring shelves. So if I put water in the back over there, and everybody will pass by here, and they will see many things here. So there's natural advantage of spreading these fast movers. Our model will allow us to quantify these things. Okay, so essentially the product allocated to the shelf, not the shelf itself only, across the entire store. And that's what took us plenty of effort to develop over the years. But I think now we have now a good model for that. So what you see here is like the probability tree inside the customer head. So people in consulting, when they talk about retail management, they say now modern customers have decision trees in their mind. So they have, we believe that in their mind they have something like this. So a customer will arrive to the store, and first of all, they will decide to go to shelf B. And they will go to shelf B with a probability of theta B. This theta B is actually the traffic. This is our main ingredient for traffic. So the customer will go to the shelf with this probability. And then once they get to the shelf, they will see the product with some other probability. And we're taking it easy here. The probability is the space allocated to the product over the shelf length. So the more space you give to the product, the more the likelihood of seeing the product. And then once they see the product, they will decide to buy the product or not based on the something called the impulse purchase rate. And this is something kind of well established in the marketing literature, even though there is people talk about it, but there is no easy way of estimating it. For us, there was two good news on this. First of all, we had a customer survey. What we explained this to them, and we estimated this based on a real customer survey. And second, we did some sensitivity analysis on this, and it turned out that even if our survey is off by 10–20%, it doesn't make a big difference. So as long as you get your impulse products right, you don't have to be extra picky on estimating this impulse purchase rate. So it's a three-step model, essentially. The customers go to the shelf, they see the product, then they decide to buy impulsively. And this is, if they decide to buy, they make an impulse profit of rho, and this is like the profit margin of product P. This also tends to be hard to get because of confidentiality in some retailers. Luckily, the retailer in Lebanon was very open to us. So we were able to estimate this from that retailer in Lebanon. Then in our other papers with other retailers, we got an idea about the percentages of the profit margins. Sometimes we use the data we get from Lebanon on this. So this is the traffic model. Now I'm going to define the two components of the model. Yes, sure.
What would be the difference here with respect to usual product and not talking about impulse profit?
I think essentially for usual product, the customer would be looking aggressively for the product. So it's not like they see it by mistake.
Okay, so the P would be equal to the first branch would be equal to 1.
Yes, I think they would look for it, and then the impulse is not there. So essentially, it will stop here most likely. So this is for the allocation-based, what we call, the location-based component of the traffic. Yes.
So in the previous slide, so you are saying that in some way the impulse buying is a complementary product to the original product that the person came to buy, because in some way that you want to exploit the fact that people are coming to buy a product. So let's use that to our advantage.
That's a good point, but we didn't go there in this paper. I had a paper back in 2010 where I talked about something called tying, something called locational tying. So you can check that paper out. So sometimes this was a problem in New England, actually. They tend to sell things like, for example, strawberry. Next to it, they put lots of cake. So that was a big deal for that retailer I worked with a long time ago. So how much strawberry to put next to the cake, or how much cake to put next to the strawberry, that's an interesting problem. And there, what happened is they put the cake in two locations. Its own location in the bakery department, and some of it next to the strawberry in the produce department. Here, no. Here we assume that each product is assigned in one category. We're not considering that, but that's something for the future to include locational tying on top of this. It will be it will kind of be a compounding effect. So here people are going to buy maybe water from the bag. They see what they're passing by candy. They buy candy. So candy and water are not complementary, but it's just that they saw it on their way, on their walk there. But complementarity and tying is something that we are to consider. But again, the issue with these things is the difficulty in the modeling and then the computation. So even if you're lucky and you got a good model after many years of trials, and then the computations become really hard. So it might be at some point that it's better to separate things. So maybe solve this problem, and then with our optimized layout, use that old model I had and do the locational tying on top of that. that could be some a good way of doing things. You know. Any more questions on this? I'm glad you're asking about this, but this is a key slide. It's kind of explain our model structure. So for the component of the traffic, there is first a location-based component. So shelf B is here. This is shelf B, and this is the actual layout of the store in Beirut. George, this is in Romana, to be specific, Beirut suburbs. So essentially, the shelf is here, and the way we estimate the location-based density is in a simple way, but other researchers do it the same. It's based on proximity to the entrance and the exit. So the line here is the linear distance from the walking distance that is from the shelf to the entrance, and the blue line is the distance from the shelf to the exit. We take the minimum of these two, and then we call our traffic density KB as 1 over this. Now, because this will be part of a regression later on, you don't need to worry about what factor to put it. You can just leave it 1, and the regression will take care of the right weight to give kind of over here. And by doing it in this way, in almost all measurement units, this will be less than 1, because we want to keep these as probabilities. So this will turn out to be less than 1 if you use centimeters, if you use meters, inches, whatever you use, this will still be less than 1. And the regression, which we'll talk about shortly, will take care of the shaping this to be more realistic. Now, for the more demanding or more involved component, that's the allocation-based traffic component. And this starts by recognizing some attraction between shelves. So there is a paper in the 60s which talked about shelf attractions. So if I have water in the back and the water has a high volume, then essentially water will create more volume for nearby shelves. That's why he will divide by the distance. Okay, and the more volume water has, so mg is the volume for water in a sense. The more water volume has, the more it will attract. So what we're saying here is that the amount of demand water will attract to the shelf C if water is in the back. The amount of demand to attract the shelves here will be proportional to the water volume and to the distance to the shelf. So this is one step of the model, and then it becomes okay. So I'm going to buy water. On my way, I pass and see other things. Maybe I was buying, I don't know, I was buying, let's say, bread, and then I moved, I want to buy water. So I move from bread, and then I go to water. I pass things on the way there. So what we're doing here is an attempt to quantify this. So this thing here, it says the following. So I want to go from shelf Q, which is, let's say, buying bread, to go and buy water. While doing that, I pass by shelf B, where I'm selling candy, let's say. Okay. So by aggregating these forces here, these attractions, we figure out how many people who are going from buying bread to buying water pass by candy. And this is subject to the store geometry or to the store topology. So this delta parameter here, it will be equal to 1 if the shortest distance from Q to R from the bread to water passes by candy. So this way we're saying, okay, if people shop for bread first and they go to buy water, some of them will pass by candy. If they shop for butter first, then they go to buy water, some other ones will pass by candy. So we aggregate all of these, and this will give kind of the total benefit to shelf B from shelf Q. That's the idea of this formulation over here. So essentially every shelf Q, because it will generate its own demand, its own attraction, it will benefit another shelf B, which is in its own neighborhood. So in this way, we can aggregate these attractions, and eventually we have an overall attraction for shelf B. The problem for this, and this is coming from other shelves attracting powers. The problem with this is not a probability, so we normalize that. Okay. So this is our allocation-based component. And what's interesting about this model is that this kind of network thing is across the whole store. So any change in the shelf allocation, so let's say in the back I have, let's say maybe water and soda. If I switch water and soda in the back of the store, it could, yes, create what, so this could create what we call ripple effects and change the traffic across the entire store. I just have a technical footnote here since we have time. Essentially, when it comes to quantifying the volume on a shelf, it's not an easy problem because on the shelf you could have water, you could have bread, you could have milk. So these things have some complementarity in them. So you need to, you cannot double count. So if you say, if I have on the water, let's say shelf, if you have on the shelf water and milk, the number of people who shop there is not simply the number of baskets of water plus number of baskets of milk, because there is complementarity. So you have to subtract the complementarity. So it becomes like a long formula if you have many things on the same shelf. We learned this the hard way, and then now we have a nice formula for it. So anyways, with this, we have now what we call a ripple effect model. What we do, it's an important step, is we combine the location-based traffic component KB, which is proportional to the distance, to the entrance and exit, with the allocation-based component, PIB, which depends on the product allocation across the store. And to keep things as probabilities, we use this logistic regression. Sometimes they call this beta regression. And eventually it leads to this probability of going to store B. So this is a probability here. Inside the probability, you have the location-based traffic component. You also have the allocation-based traffic component. And how do we find these parameters, beta 1 and beta 2, by doing regression? Of course, if you want to do regression, you need to have some data on this so-called dependent variable. Any idea, since you guys are asking very good questions? So how do you think we can get this theta, the dependent variable? Yes, but how do you get the raw data for it?
For these products?
Yes. So this is like, for example, at shelf B, how many people are likely to go there? So the fraction of customers that go to shelf B. If in a given supermarket, how can you estimate this?
The market share of this category in the whole supermarket.
That's a good proxy for that. But that's a good way of doing it. But this is for the what if you have multiple things on the shelf? So this is for a shelf that has not many products on it. So one way to estimate this is through modern sensory technologies. Now they have these GPS mounted on the carts, so they track you around the store. So as you move around the store, they will count how many customers visited each location. So it can come from that sensory technology. It can also come from cameras. So and now retailers also have this data. So modern technology can be useful in estimating this kind of parameter. However, in our case, we didn't have access to this kind of data because we were working with a medium-sized retailer. So we had access though to e-receipts, essentially customer receipts. So from the e-receipts, we assumed some behavior pattern of the customer, the way the customers move in the store. And based on that, we estimated this dependent parameter. I will talk about this shortly. But this is essentially a nice way to, if you have some nice data, the retailer has data on locations, they can use them in this model. Yes.
You just need to know what is the path traversed by a customer in the store. So if you have like products that are in pot, you can also understand what is the path traversed, right? Because you can only buy a product if you pick it. So if you traverse the path,
yeah,
that means that that's in that way you can infer the path from the purchase history and get this data.
Yeah. Essentially in the 60s, the way they estimated this was funny. They creative. They made GAs, people like I used to be, and you guys are now, disguised as sales rep, and they followed the customer around the store. Yeah, that's how they did it in the 60s in this paper by Harley and Ring. So now, so that's the old-fashioned way of doing it.
This was very much debated for ethical reasons.
Yes. Now the modern review, I talked to somebody in Lebanon and said, you can ask the security guy, he will tell you everything. So security people can also tell you really, can tell you exactly how much traffic you have in each location if you don't have access to database. Yeah. So anyways, we call this the ripple effect model because essentially what happens here, this traffic component, it's sensitive to any change in allocation. So you change allocation anywhere, it will create ripple effects across the store. Of course, it will create bigger effect closer to the change, and then it will kind of fade out across the store. So we wanted to kind of up our game with the referees, one of the revisions. So because they were asking, what's new here? What's happening here? So we come up with this ripple effect thing to kind of impress the referees, but I think it's a nice catch. All right. Yes.
So when this ripple effect arises, I mean, the retailers who are selling products will not be very happy because I mean, this ripple effect is somewhat of an instability in the system. Right? And if the retailers are risk averse in some way, they would like some categories not to be shifted.
Exactly, but here, if they're risk averse, they can assess the effect. So now in the past, retailers move things around. So we're gonna do a promotion next week. We put this thing here, and they do not know the effect of this on the whole store. Now with this, they can figure out the exact effect of this. So this is
giving them a tool.
Exactly. Yeah. And actually, at some point, I talked to AC Nielsen in Lebanon, and they like this, and they think this could be a useful tool. Unfortunately, they want me to do the work for them, so I thought they would help me with the work, but they didn't. So they gave me a huge data to. But the Nielsen essentially showed just something like this. This is useful for retailers. So now we will talk about more the optimization model. So in our optimization model, we decide on two main variables, like I said. So to what shelf to allocate a given product and the amount of shelf space to allocate to the product. So we have two main decision variables here, a binary variable of where to allocate the product and a continuous variable of where to allocate the product, how much space to allocate to the product. And this is a hard problem. I mean, even for the case where we don't look at allocation-based traffic, just allocation-based traffic, this is a multi-knapsack problem. And in our previous work also, we had shown that this is a really hard problem in the sense of being NP hard and very hard to solve. So it's trying to look for polynomial exact schemes is not easy in for this problem. So as a remedy for this, to try to get like a tractable solution, we come up with three kind of ways around this. And so first thing is look at groups, not products. And this is useful for retailers because retailers, they think about groups, so they think about soda and water, for example, and other things, other cold drink as one group. They think about eggs and milk as being in one group. So this is in line with the retailer's practice, and it will help keep the research results reasonable in terms of putting things together. So in terms of the groups, essentially products in the same group, they go on the same shelf. So our problem becomes where to allocate the group. And inside that group, we have products, and a product is a category. Okay. So that's one thing we did. And then we solved the problem in two phases. In the first phase, we said, look, I mean, this group can go to, in this, suppose I have a store here. I have maybe, I don't know, 20 shelves. So this group can go to, suppose we don't have any restriction on the refrigeration or something else. Suppose one group can go to any one of these shelves. So the question we asked in phase one of the solution was, look, if this group went into any one of these 20 shelves, how will the assignment be? What product will go first? And how much space will I assign to each product? So by solving single shelf, single group problems, we were able to solve, even though we tried all the combination, but we can solve things very fast in this way. So this is phase one. Then in phase two, we use the input of phase one. So now I know if I put group one here, I will have this much impulse and I will need this many spaces. If I put group two in the next shelf, I will have this impulse and this will be the space allocation. So we use phase one result into phase two, okay? And this makes life much easier. But still, I mean, we have the resulting problem is a nonlinear integer problem, a tough problem. And there is no guarantee of global optimality. So the initial solution matters. So what we found is that feeding the solver good solutions based on like practical insights, such as putting the fast movers in the back, tend to help more. So the third step we did to improve the goodness of the solution to be close to the optimal is to feed the solver some good allocation, some good configurations, we call them. I'll show you some examples shortly. So, but the good news is the phase one problem, it's a simple knapsack problem and also continuous knapsack problem. So here we're saying this is category group G. In group G, I have products, which I'm calling them ZG, that are products. And if I assign group G to shelf B, how much space I would allocate to each product on shelf B? This is the problem here. And the nice thing about this problem is that the traffic itself, theta, is exogenous to this. So really, the theta b can be outside the whole thing. And that makes life much easier. So this is a problem. It's easy to solve. You don't even need optimization to solve this. This can be solved with a simple greedy algorithm, which we prove the optimality of. Essentially, you work with a simplified objective, which is our current objective without the traffic component, just a proxy objective. And with this objective, you can simply look at a shelf, look at products in a group, look at the most profitable product, and assign to that profitable product the maximum space possible. This is the gist of the algorithm here. So you rank products by order of attractiveness by this metric here, which doesn't have to do with the traffic. And then we fill the shelf while we can, essentially. And we assign the maximum. So each product has a space limit. Lower bound is L and upper bound is U. So to the attractive products, we assign the maximum bound U. And eventually the last one or two products on the shelf will receive a lower space, basically. That's the idea here. And this algorithm has, we showed it to be optimal. Okay, the proof for it is in the paper. So this is good news that phase one problem can be solved with a simple algorithm. But now the hard part is in, how much time do I have, George?
15 minutes if you want to leave some time for questions.
Okay, great. I'll need 10 minutes, I think. So for the hard problem is the phase two problem, where we have here the objective. The objective is to maximize the impulse profit per customer. So there's no volume here. This is basically maximizing the impulse share or the impulse amount in each basket. Okay. And we have as decision variables the allocation. So the space has been assigned in the third step. But the hard part here are these assignment variables. The x's, these are binary variables, and they appear here and they appear here. So we have a difficult, challenging nonlinear integer program. It's like a nonlinear integer assignment problem, which is really, in our experience, has proven to be quite hard to solve, especially because of this beta regression here, which doesn't make life easier. So with all the tricks we had, group-based assignment, starting with good initial solutions, two-phase problems, still we found ourselves stuck with this. It's taking for a very long time to solve and not able to quantify an optimality gap. Okay, so in order to quantify optimality gaps, we tried to develop some tight bounds on this beta regression construct.
Sorry,
yes.
What are the decision values?
The axis. XVG, which is where to allocate group G, to which shelf to allocate group G. Okay. What's that?
It's an integer program.
Yes, but here the nonlinearity is here. So because here you have in the small f you have the x, and then it shows up everywhere. This is the ripple effect in the solution, basically. You have it here, and this makes all because this is you have it in the numerator in the exponential. You have it in the denominator, also in the exponential, it becomes hard to solve. Okay. So that's why, yes.
If you relax this problem and then solve, then did you check how much is the optimality gap when you relax it and solve it? Like relax the integer.
I mean, we tried that, but I don't think you'll get, because this is an assignment problem. It will not be easy. And it's known that assignment problems and relaxation don't work very easily.
Yeah.
Okay. So the approximation we developed for this beta regression part was basically studying its convexity. It's like an S-shaped curve, which we studied its convexity. It has an inflection point in the middle. And then we found that a good piecewise approximation for it is given by something like this. So here T is like a tangent, and then we have a combination of lines that pass by a point and on some tangent. And to make a long story short, essentially the approximation looks something like this. So one of these three lines. And the nice thing about the approximation is to provide a tight upper bound, which means you can estimate a duality gap. and you can quantify the quality of your solution. So even though the solution you're getting is not guaranteed to be optimal, but thanks to this bound over here, we can quantify the optimality gap. And in our trials, we found optimality gaps of the order of around 10%, after around an hour of running typically. So which is not too bad for the problem that we have. Yes.
From expert guidance, you would know some value of theta. So around that point, you will construct. This is what you are saying, right? That you have some.
Yes, we have some, approximation for these. And essentially, for each shelf, this will be different. Yeah, so these get kind of crafted for each shelf, but we found that, for example, here that 0.5 as an intermediate point for the lines seems to be like a good idea. But these will differ for each shelf, because this B here pertains to each shelf. So for each shelf, this will have to be developed. Okay, and then with this, you will replace something nonlinear with a large number of linear constraints. So since the problem is still challenging, but now it's nonlinear integer, and it can be solved with modern solvers in a reasonable way, basically. Okay. So now, with this kind of computational background and motivations, I'll talk about the case study in Beirut. This is a medium-sized supermarket. We have these. Naturally, the retailer by themselves had groups. So before we thought about the group modeling, the retailer had thought about groups. These are the groups. Sometimes they call these departments even. These are the categories in the group. Okay. And what we analyzed, and we have some basket data on the store. So we analyzed the baskets. We found that few categories, as you can see here, they drive the traffic. This is typical, so which means that you have fast movers, and it's not in retail stores. Fast movers, which amount to 10% of the number, they drive 80% of the traffic. So you can see it here in this kind of shape. We look at the basket sizes. The average basket size is 4, but some baskets tend to be up to 20. So it is a medium-sized store. Some baskets can be a bit, most baskets are medium-sized, but some baskets are large. And we had a nice data of 40,000 receipts over 3 months. We used this data to estimate the traffic, the dependent variable for the regression. So here, for example, we have 2 customers, customers 1 and 2, and we have their e-receipts, what they bought. So customer 1, the green customer, he had a long shopping list. He kind of went all over the store. And the way we drew this line is by solving a traveling salesman problem. Okay. So here we have 2 customers, the green and the red customer. This on the shopping list, we plotted these paths, and then we counted the number of times each shelf is visited. So this took some programming effort to tell the solver or the program we use that if you pass, for example, by here, even though no product is allocated, but this will be counted. So this way, out of 40,000 customers, you can count how many of them will visit, let's say, this gray shelf here. And then this theta probability will be the fraction of customers who went by here. So 20,000 go here, theta will be 0.5. So we solved 40,000 traveling salesman problem. And because TSP is somewhat becoming easier, it's an easy to solve problem. And because we have a very strong first author in optimization, we solved these 40,000 problems very efficiently. So now we have this regression, and then we come after this. We have the theta. We build the regression model, and we're ready to attack our prescriptive model. Okay, to decide what to allocate each product. So this is the what we call the current layout. So this is what the retailer was doing when we visited them a few years back. And we have a color coding here for the traffic. So yellow is low traffic, orange is medium, and red is high traffic. And based on the current layout, our model can estimate, it can give a score. So the current layout had a $1.14 average impulse profit per basket. So in Lebanon, the currency is different, and it's a small store. So and also this is also a profit margin, not revenue. And in supermarkets, profit margins tend to be tight. Okay. So from each customer, this retailer is making $1.14 profit from impulse buying. Okay. And this was the current allocation. We optimized this. And in the optimization, the objective increased to $1.89, which is 65% improvement in the impulse profit. Okay. So this was our main kind of, if you want newspaper headline, 65% improvement of impulse products. Now, how do we do it? Essentially, for example, here you have this, for example, category water. 64 here in the corner is water. So water was here next to the exit, not being very beneficial. We took water from here and we placed it there in the corner. So by moving water from here to there, we created lots of traffic. And if you look at the middle shelves here, so the middle shelves now are more orange. And our scale for the color should be improved, but you can see that the middle shelves became more visible. So by moving things more to the back of the store and moving things in a smart way, the model is doing it for us, we could achieve this high improvement in impulse power. Okay, any questions here? So that's how we did it, essentially by moving things around in a smart way. Yes.
This would mean that there is more. Was water located close to the entrance? To
the exit.
But now you shifted it to
back of the
away, so you increase the customer disappointment.
We increase the customer walking. In this paper, we don't look at this. In another paper, we're trying to estimate this amount of effort, But we saw in that paper that essentially you have one solutions basically, and you can balance things.
I think Sihan has a question.
Sure.
Yes, hello. Thank you. I have a question because we know that for impulse buying products, in most cases, the retailers put them close to the cashiers. So I don't know, I don't see very well the picture here. You have only one cashier or two, because I was like surprised to see that yellow place close to the cashier.
Yes, actually, we have one cashier only.
Okay.
And so I think this is 23 is maybe chewing gums. It was placed here. It was a chewing gum. I think this 23. It was placed here. And in our optimization, we could not do much with this because of some space restrictions. This is a small shelf here, so we cannot do much with it.
Okay. Now, because I was wondering when you showed like the kind of decision tree,
yes.
And we know that for those products, they are often close to the cashier, like in front of the cashier. So customer have to pass by that way. So they have to, like in your the beginning, either the customers pass by the shelf or not. Mm-hmm. For those shelves who are close to a cashier, they 100% will pass by that point. So I was wondering if your model takes into account the fact that it's like 100% sure that it will be in their path to go out.
So in our current layout, at least, if you look here, the exit is very close to the cashier. So essentially, the items which are next to the cashier will have a high location-based traffic. So this is how we account for this. Okay.
Okay.
It's not one. It's not a probability one. You're right. It is close to one. Because this will be a very small distance from. How do we do this pointer? So from here to here, it's a very small distance. So this will be close to one, and it will achieve the effect that you have in mind. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
It's a matter of definition. In marketing, they define impulse products that are at the cashier.
I mean, we look at different marketing papers. I think it goes beyond that. It's not just because, I mean, you cannot fit many things next to the cashier, Yeah. Yes. So one thing, Siham, is that you cannot really fit everything next to the cashier, Things like chocolate, or, I mean, we're talking about the whole candy category, or the whole cake category. You can't put that next to the cashier. Usually they put things like chewing gums, like, I don't know, lollipops or something. But you cannot put many things, big things next to the cashier. Yeah, but that's a good point. Also, one other thing we didn't talk about here is our end caps. So similar to the cashier, at the end of every shelf, you have end caps. And that's something we didn't look at in this paper, which can be considered later on. Also, end caps, what happened at the end of, and we have them in the figure. So here, if you look at the figure, you have the end caps here. Those also we choose to left out to keep the problem tractable for now. But we have plans to look at these end caps problems. So I think the next to the cashier will be similar to the end caps. So limited space and high visibility, basically. Okay. Did I answer your question? Okay, great. Thank you for the question. So we're almost running out of time. So essentially, the main insight we got from the analysis beyond the numbers is that location is the most important thing. So it's all about location. So let me explain why. So if you look at here, we have the input allocation, which is, by the way, in this case, not the current allocation. So we said we feed the solver good inputs. So one input we tried is to put the fast movers in the back. Okay, that's one thing we tried. I mean, try to do it in an ad hoc way. And that led to this kind of, so we went from 1.19 to 1.38. So smart manipulation by hand leads to 0.19 cents improvement on the impulse profit. Then we did 2 experiments. In the first experiment, we fixed the size of each category. So categories have bounds on their sizes. We fixed the size. We said the size is fixed. There's no leeway in the size. We're just going to move things around the store. By deciding on the location, we were able to improve the profit by around 32%. Now, we did a second experiment where we said, no, we're going to follow the classical approach. Let's keep everything in their current location, or in their input location, actually. But let's try to play with these bounds, okay? We did that, and we only have an improvement in the profit of around 4%. So that means that out of a total of 37% improvement in the impulse profit, most of the improvement is coming from the location. And this is interesting for us because in the classical literature, it's all about the space, not about the location. What we're saying here that in contrast to the literature, no. What you should worry about maybe more is not how much space you allocate to each product. What gives you more impulse, more profit is where do you locate the category? That's the insight from this. And the second useful insight, I would call it, is that we did some sensitivity analysis on the input parameters, like for this impulse purchase rate, and we found it not to make a big difference. So it is an important parameter, but as we change it by plus minus 10%, for example, the objective value will not fluctuate too much. So the model, in a sense, is robust. So things which are hard to estimate, like this impulse rate that referees hammered us on over the years, it's basically, even if you don't estimate it in a perfect way, it will still not be a very bad thing. Okay, so these were our main findings. And for future research, as always, we want to work with a more cooperative retailer. The problem with retailers, if you ask them for basket data, they will be worried because it has everything. That it has the profit margins. It has. So what we are asking for is sensitive data, baskets, profit margins. There are some commercially available databases out there, but you want to map that to the layout, and that's hard. So in the commercially available databases, you don't have the layout available. So this requires a highly cooperative retailer. We're still working on that. I'm going to France once a year, not for this only, but as I'm giving a workshop there, but also I'm trying to work with a retailer there, a big retailer there, on establishing this for their supermarkets. So there has been some improvement on that, some collaboration on that. So hopefully we'll get a big data set from a big retailer in France soon. Of course, the traffic model can be improved. I mean, one thing we did, if you notice that this major part of the challenge was in this beta regression. So I think maybe we overdid it. This paper is now almost over, but in future papers, we think things can be improved there. You don't have to worry, make it too hard on yourself, with this exponential regression. And this goes with our second future objective to improve computational efficiency. And we also want to integrate the SKU level through the planogram kind of type view. So like I told George at the beginning, this might not be an easy problem, but can be solved sequentially. And finally, we want to improve customer welfare and customer well-being. On this one, because we don't want to appear as like really capitalist, we have made some good progress. I will talk to you about in a minute. So in our ongoing, in terms of papers on this, we published 2 papers. A third paper should be accepted hopefully any minute now in operation research after many revisions over the years. And we have a paper that balances kind of customer welfare with retail welfare, which is under review in eJour. And that's also in a good stage of review. So these things have been keeping us busy over the years. And we believe there is still more room for work on this. And I thank you for listening. If you have any more questions, I'll be happy to answer.